more big news today that nobody's really talking about right now. Don't sleep on color. Michael Moe says KURL or color has acquired 213 Bitcoin for 21 million at 98 per Bitcoin and has achieved Bitcoin yield of 93% year to date. As of Jan 6, 2025, we hodl 430 Bitcoin acquired for 42 million at an average of 97,000 per Bitcoin. So we got MicroStrategy, we got Semler Scientific, and we got this new entry on Metaplanet, and we got this new entry, KULR. Does this not look like a Michael Saylor tweet? He actually retweeted it this morning. That's why I saw it. People are taking note. People are taking note. And if you ask me, I still wouldn't, I don't know. Like I was talking about Semler very early on in the podcast here before it was really anything. And I think you could get a Semler share for like $10 at the time. And it was a good buy then. And something like this might be a good buy now, but I still don't think anybody is going to outperform MicroStrategy. I really don't. And so I'm looking at these Semlers, I'm looking at the KULRs, other companies who are getting into Bitcoin. I just don't think anybody's going to be able to compete with MicroStrategy. I really don't. And there might be some arbitrage where MicroStrategy shoots up and you want to sell a few to buy some KULR or Semler. But for the most part, like if you're looking at this thing really long term, there's going to be no better spot than MicroStrategy in the traditional world. Holding Bitcoin yourself is by far the best option there. But if you have money tied up in the old system, I just don't think anybody's going to outperform MicroStrategy. But anyways, the video I want to watch here is talking about this kind of stuff. This is talking about institutional wave and then nation state wave and kind of where we are right now. I want to watch this video quickly. So let's get to it. I'll try to get some other questions addressed after, but I do want to watch this video here. This is Mark Moss. This was his presentation at the Dubai conference. Talking about institutions, talking about nation states, talking about where we are today. I thought this was a very good presentation, but I want to watch about 5 minutes of it.
Now, during this time, Bitcoin by 2020 took about 0% of store value assets. Not even a blip, not even a drop in the bucket. Okay, now let's get into some of this future, okay? Now, phase 2 is what we call the frenzy phase, and this is where we're at today, all right? This is gonna be unlike anything we've ever seen, and no matter how bullish you are, you're not bullish enough. Now, this is where Bitcoin evolves from the collectible phase and cements itself as the premier store value. All right, so what we can see is we're in this institutional frenzy phase, and we're starting to see institutional adoption come in. And now, of course, here we are talking about sovereign adoption that both happen in this phase. Now, this maps, again, in the evolution of money, and we'll complete the store value phase. We'll get to the medium exchange phase next. But this is where we're at today. Now, again, not all collectibles make it to this next level, but Bitcoin will. Now, I do want to point out real quick, for everybody who thinks that they're too late, that maybe they missed it, using an S-curve dynamic is how we'll look at technology adoption. Now, one way we can look at this S-curve is that the time it takes to go from 0 to 10% is the time it takes to go from 10 to 90%. And the reason why I want to show you this is because it illustrates that the size of this move we're going into now is much larger. Sure, today Bitcoin is about a $2 trillion US dollar market cap. Hundreds of billions of dollars have gone into it. And now we're about to see trillions of dollars come into it. The size and speed of the move is much bigger. So you haven't missed anything. It's just getting started. Now, at this point, we can see this total store value assets. You can see Bitcoin down here on the bottom right, sitting today at about 2 trillion. And it's still just a little blip on the road right here, a drop in the bucket. Now, how much bigger is it going to get? Well, I got a bunch more charts to show you, so don't worry. But really, right now, this is the frenzy. This is the institutional phase. We can see that right now today, about 60 companies have already started adopting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And this is happening every day. We see new announcements of this happening. This chart, the big chart here, shows the real institutional adoption. We have MicroStrategy adding about $1 billion a week. I just saw before I went on stage, Riot just added about $500 million of debt to buy Bitcoin. We have Marathon doing $1 billion. And right now, this is showing us that about 13.5% of all Bitcoin is now being held by institutions. Of course it is. Bitcoin was always coming for everybody, and this is part of the second stage. Now, it's not just institutions, it's also sovereign adoption. We have sovereign FOMO. We have, of course, El Salvador, sort of with this first mover advantage. Brazil, just introducing bills to build a strategic reserve. Of course, the United States has their Bitcoin bill going through. Now, per Polymarket, I looked earlier today, it's about a 25% chance of going through. I think that's way too low. I think it's going to be much higher. Now, history shows us what happens when sovereigns start competing. History shows us a lot of things. So, for example, in the 1800s, the entire world decided to go to a gold standard. Some parts of the world, like China, didn't want the gold standard. They had silver. They wanted to stay with silver, and they lost their position as a world leader. We saw the 1950s, the race for space. We saw the race for nuclear weapons. When nations start competing, things really take off. So we have a precedent for where this is going. But why? Why are the institutions FOMOing in, racing into a new asset? Well, because they see what we all should see. They see that there is no end to the monetary debasement that's coming. And they're all looking for a way to protect themselves. What we have right here is that we can see the bottom right is the U.S. Federal Reserve's balance sheet, which has been expanding by 13% a year over the last 4 years. We can see the money supply has been averaging over 8.5% over the last 4 years, and there's no end in sight. How do we know there's no end in sight? Well, besides the fact that they're in a debt-based monetary system that always has to grow, the government actually tells us that. We can look at the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, and we can see that they are projecting through 2054, the next 30 years for us. And they show us that the deficit spending is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. They show us that the debt levels are going to go up like a hockey stick. And they also show us that population growth on the top right is going to plummet as the GDP goes down at the same time. Population growth going down, GDP going down, means debt levels go up. Now, they also show us the budget through 2054, 30 years from now, and there's no recession in sight. They don't expect any dip in the revenue coming in. So where does all this come from? Money printing. Now, of course, this is what they tell us for the next 30 years. When you look at the population decline and the GDP decline, I think this is way understated. But for the purpose of what we're doing, we're going to use these numbers and project it out into the future. So in this phase from 2020 to 2030, using the numbers that we have from the last 4 to 5 years, we can project out the money supply growth at 8% continuing, bonds going up 5%, real estate and equities, which are basically perfect proxies for monetary debasement, going up at 8%. Bitcoin maybe finishing the decade at about a 53%. We're at about 60% right now. That would put Bitcoin at a 21 trillion market cap. $1 million per Bitcoin in the next 5 years, or a 10x from right here. Now, this may sound like a big number, but if we look at it, Bitcoin is only capturing 1.5% of total store value assets at this point. Now, if it was able to get 5%, which might be way more reasonable, that puts Bitcoin at a $3 million price per Bitcoin. So I believe 1 million is extremely bearish and not bullish at all. Now, let's just keep going. If we look at it as a percentage of store value assets, just so you can visually see it a little bit better, you can see that now Bitcoin is about on par with gold. Maybe it's overtaken. It's flipped gold by this time. Now, it's one point that I want to bring out right here real quickly is a lot of people think that for Bitcoin to be worth 1 million or 5 million or 20 million, well, the dollar's worthless, right? At that point, the dollar doesn't buy anything. No, that's absolutely not right. You see, Bitcoin is disrupting other assets. I have a venture fund called the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund. As a venture investor, we look at a disruptive technology, we look at the size of the markets it's disrupting, and then we speculate as to what percentage we think we could take from those other markets. So Bitcoin is taking from bonds, it's taking from real estate, it's taking from equities. The dollar doesn't have to die. Sure, gas goes from $4 to $8. It doesn't mean it goes to zero. Now, is that realistic to get 1%? Well, we can look at other disruptive technologies like Uber or Airbnb. Both of them were able to capture 10% of their market in less than 10 years. 1.5% is extremely conservative. All right, now let's start going into the future, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to start talking even faster. All right.
All right, we're going to leave it there for now. I think that's enough. That's enough reasons to be bullish about Bitcoin here. I mean, it just makes sense. It's just math. That's the thing that people on the outside really don't understand here. And in the last half hour, we went from less than 99,000 to 102,000 now. So this thing moves fast, and it's going to keep moving fast. And I really like the part that he talked about there. Well, when Bitcoin's 1 million or 5 million, whatever it is, people really believe that our dollar won't be worth anything. They say that a loaf of bread will be worth $100 at that point. That's not true at all. Because this money isn't going to come from the everyday person. It's going to come from the money that's sitting in real estate. It's going to come from money that's sitting in bonds, in gold, That's where it's going to come from. It's not going to change the purchasing price of anything. It will continue to get more expensive. Let's say 10% a year, maybe, if we're lucky. But it's not like we're going to go to a time where the US dollar becomes zero. It's never going to happen, especially when Trump takes office. And I think he's going to move things into the US Treasury. The Treasury is going to back a new dollar behind Bitcoin, and things will improve without anybody really anybody knowing why things are getting better. So the point there is just to understand where we are. And I know most people who watch that who haven't studied Bitcoin will think that that's insanity, but I'm thinking most people here realize that that's absolutely possible. So then you go to what happens when Bitcoin becomes 1 million. And this is the best part. When Bitcoin becomes $1 million per Bitcoin, that means that 1 sat is equal to 1 cent. And that's when we start measuring things in sats versus Bitcoin. And when it goes from 1 cent to 2 cents, that's 1 million to $2 million. And then 2 cents to 3 cents, 3 cents to 10 cents. That's when things really start to move here. And so today, going back to our metrics there that we talked about, 1 year ago, you could have purchased 1 year ago with $1 in the US, you could have got 2,270 sats for $1 1 year ago. This is when the price was $47,000 US. Today, this is even less now since we've updated these. That same $1 gets you less than 1,000 sats in 1 year. And if and when Bitcoin hits $1 million US, that's going to be 1 sat. No, that's wrong. 100 sats. So again, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be doing anything else in your life right now other than trying to get as many sats as you possibly can. That's it. That should be your main focus for these next couple of months, years, and decades. Do everything that you can. Start off by selling things, but then find ways to keep earning, to keep adding value, whether you're earning fiat and converting it to Bitcoin or earning Bitcoin. But that's your focus. Buying it, learning how to store it, and then learning how to protect it for when we hit 1 million, when we hit 5 million, 100 million. That should be everybody's main focus right now here. I don't have to tell you what's going to happen here. I don't need to get you excited about it. I need you to get prepared for what's coming here. So pretty, Mike says the KULR is already up 2,000 in the last year. Wow. Mr. Dig Deeper.